Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Tess. I'm one of the hosts today. My pronouns are she, they. I'm a German living in the Netherlands and work in the UK. I'm so glad to be here with you all this morning and see what comes out of this first recording. So, Jarvis, want you share something about yourself?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Tess. Hi, I'm Jarvis Smith. I'm a co-founder of an ethical lifestyle media company called My Green Pod, and I also am an ambassador, which is the new movement that I'm a part of. And again, I'm also really excited to be here with you two for today's chat. Over to you, Ben.
Awesome. I'm Ben Viba. I'm American, but I live in London, and I'm a filmmaker by trade and social impact strategist. So I really just enjoy helping people find uh, where we can have good, honest discourse together. So yeah, this is great.
Thanks, Ben and Jarvis. And there's also two more people coming at times. So our fourth person, Charlotte, she's going into mat leave, so she won't be with us today. But as we start, so we thought maybe we talk about the big awakening. So I mean, like what we all feel, depending where we are, U.S., Germany, Netherlands, UK. So much things are happening, and feel we are waking up to something new, which we don't sometimes yet know what it is. We certainly know, experience all the turmoil in the world, but I think it would be good to just talk about what does awaken mean for us? How do we feel that? And what would we might need to have capabilities to thrive or to even be in an awakening? So I think that would be quite good because we always try to feel okay. What is the current pulse? So, and I think awakening is a huge pulse. It's really beating, highly vibrating. So let's talk about this a bit. What do you think about?
What do you mean by awakening? When you say awakening, what do you mean?
I think there is both possibly maybe two or three dimensions. There's a physical awakening. I mean, there's an innerly awakening. Awakening basically means that before we might have been in some kind of metaphorical or physical sleep, and now political situations change. U.S. lots of turmoil. Germany has been recent votes. UK and different countries. So we feel suddenly there is a wave of changes. And we talk about the poly crisis and the omni crisis, different crises which are coming not anymore after, but at the same time. So awakening describes that moment when we feel something is rolling over us and we are waking literally to it and from our kind of sleep. That's why I see
Mm,
it. What do you think
yeah,
yourself?
thank you, Ben.
I mean, that kind of begs the question if we think that trauma or crises is kind of the singular thing that brings us out of that, right? That uh, uh, without these kind of big moments, and regardless of where in the world they're happening, but that draws people's attention. If 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 in the absence of that, right, are people still activated and aware and thinking about like being present and being awake? Um, and so that does make me wonder, right? Like when things are going well, do we kind of settle and not think about that as much? Do we kind of wait and then react when big changes happen? What do you
Mm.
guys think?
When I hear the word awakening, I agree with both of you. I instantly go into spiritual. I kind of the essence of awakening to me means that kind of spiritual connection. And as you both may know, most of my life I've been practicing either yoga or trained with a shaman, and so it's always been about awakening. But what it means to me is it means having access to information that is beyond the everyday stuff. And to put that into context, if I watch the news and it's telling me something, I'm always watching it with what I would describe as an awakened state. Like, rather than going, this is what they're telling me, therefore it must be true, I'm like, why am I being told this? Does this feel true to
Mm.
me? Can I get a perspective of it intuitively? And that to me is like a description of being awakened. But that's just my version of it. So, but
Yeah.
I love yours, what you said about trauma, because actually I only got to this state of accessibility to trusting my intuition or trusting my gut through adversity, right? Like through being on the edge,
Sure.
taking too many drugs and drinking too much alcohol, that I felt so sick that I needed to have a wake up call, and that was my kind of beginning of awakening. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah, I mean, I also thought, I mean, when you talk about the spiritualism and like myself, growing up in Christian, Judeo-Christian faith-based forms, and I recently read that in the Islamic mystics in Sufism, there's a saying that people are sleeping and only when they die they wake up.
Yeah.
And of course, it's this like this symbolic dying and waking up. And waking up is then what is waking up, like our ego or other things. So I think many people are currently waking up, and also especially in a journey which they haven't planned yet because it wasn't meant for them. So they just coming out from a kind of security which they felt being in, and now they are at the first step of this. And that's usually when you wake up from a nightmare, something you feel. I mean, you kind of sometimes feel, where am I? What's going to happen? I think that awakening currently is different.
Mm. Yeah, we've been having this discussion a lot with. I'm part of this movement called O and three M's, and we call it a mass mobilizing movement that's full of all the M's, magic and mystery and mysticism and music, and
Right.
anyway. But the point is that we've been discussing maybe we're not meant to be fully awakened in this human experience, because if we were, then we wouldn't be able to have a human experience. That's a bit of a conundrum, isn't it?
Well, I think we definitely, yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, I do think we take on, especially now that we're exposed to things happening across the world in ways we weren't before. Say 20 years ago. So I do think we are made to feel now that we have to feel connected in this global way. When I don't,
Mm,
yeah, to your point, I don't think we are designed that way. I don't think a singular person is that capable of trying to take on that much, right? Emotionally and information wise, right? I mean, there's but I think we've kind of created a world for ourselves where we apply pressure to everyone that we should or we need to do that, and I think that kind of forces people to wake up, not necessarily in a good way, right?
mm,
If you feel that pressure is of a fair ask of people, right?
mm. I remember when we had the pandemic, and for me, it felt like this was the only time that I'd seen, certainly in my lifetime, where there seemed to be this kind of mass awakening,
Yeah,
which came through, really extreme circumstances. There was this virus that everybody was scared they were going to die from. You were scared not to mix with people because you didn't want to give it or get it. And everyone kind of stayed indoors and were only allowed out in some cases an hour a day, in some cases not at all, depending on what part of the world you were in. And I remember that. I remember that time, and I was like, "Wow, we've stopped to take a deep breath, and then suddenly, air quality gets better. We're connecting
yeah,
with nature more. We're connecting with our families more. There's more of a realization about the rat race that we've been living in, going to work, coming home, Groundhog Day, and it really felt to me like there was this kind of mass awakening, which felt inspiring, but." Maybe that I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Would you say that was potentially an awakening?
oh man, yes, because one of the things you saw was and you still see a degree to it, but it's trickled off, is a shared empathy and compassion, because everyone in the world was kind of going through the same thing. in a really, really rare way, right? That's something that so rarely happens. So it didn't matter who you were talking to or where in the world you were talking to them at, right? People for a time understood that they were going through something similar, and being asked to make some concessions or sacrifices, or stay inside, and that's, all of that. But I think that empathy kind of dissipated, and you saw people wanting to, or at least people who didn't, people in places of power who don't want things to change, or they don't want
Hmm.
people to be too awakened, emotionally and spiritually. Um, it does not help their agenda. So I think you saw this pressure for, let's get things back to normal. I mean, your quote unquote normal, right? Whatever that whatever that is.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, but I think that shared empathy and stuff was real, and I think that was a huge success, showing people that we can live differently and things will be okay in doing that.
Hmm.
Mm. I find it interesting, even if you're saying that, I remember people were also not wanting to behave according to their rules. Like they said, okay,
Sure.
we don't need a mask, we just do whatever we want, or we are going to the very extreme of the other side. So that kind of awakening is a tricky part because some people don't even want to wake up. They don't even call about these terms of waking up. They're just in their bubble, continue to be in there. And I see it every time when I travel between different countries quite a lot. So I go from UK to Germany and see there's a different state of awakening. And some people, they just don't even have it in their system that something is waking up. So they just continue like in their normal jobs and they do the things which we think you can't do this. So there are these different layers which are interesting. That's like the different realities at the same time, which makes it really interesting, but also very difficult.
That's
Mm.
that is very true. I mean, I now because now that I think about it, I mean, I was living in Denmark during the lockdowns, and my experience there is that Danes particularly appreciate and respect rules. So if people say, "Oh, this is the ask we're making of you," I think most people there try and give a respect to that. So you didn't really see too much of this pushback of, "Oh, it's violating our rights," right? To ask us to yeah, stay inside and things like that. But then if you just hopped over the bridge and went to Sweden, Sweden did not institute mask mandates and things like that. So you're right. I mean, it is very selective, right? Culturally or provincially, like how people respond to things. Um, and
It's
I
also
have,
it was also a lot to do with what we were being told by the government as well, wasn't it?
yeah,
Do you remember? Like,
Mm.
I mean, I think certain governments were, much stronger enforcers than others, and it's amazing. Like, I mean, yeah, I mean, this is a deep subject. This is it's a big one. I think when it comes to awakening. Do, what like what about things like the climate crisis that's going on at the moment, and things like the potential World War III that's kind of seems to be constantly knocking on the door, and do you think those are awakening opportunities?
oh, oh, sure. I mean, most people, the majority of people no longer deny that the climate crisis is a real thing, right? Um, I think now it's the awakening of it is just how the methods on how to respond to it. Right? Some people say, "Oh, humor. We need to personalize things, and stop using doom and gloom, scenarios to kind of get people to waken up." And some people feel the complete opposite. But my short take on that is that I have spent time not only volunteering but full on working for climate initiatives, including aggressive nonviolent action, like direct action organizations. And I have never felt more alone than in the rooms I was in the very aggressive style of nonviolent action, like arrestable offenses level,
Mm.
of activism against the climate crisis. It's
Mm.
I it's not a knock on whether they think that will be successful. But emotionally and spiritually, I felt completely cold and an emotionless environment.
Hmm.
Right. So
That's so interesting. Because I'm coming from urbanism, and we work different layers. We always say we zoom out and we see the city, the landscape from 10,000 kilometers above, and then zoom in. So I like to get a bit higher, zooming out from bear with me. So I think when we talk about awakening, so we also have, maybe we have a privilege of awakening. I mean, I
mm,
think not everyone has the privilege to be in an awakened state. They just get whipped out of their current ecocosmos, and they
sure.
just have to adopt. And then when we talk about what are we aware of climate crisis? Yes, I think most people are aware, but there are also still people I know, they either don't give anything about it, or they are not even aware that they're still stuck kind of sustainability 1.0 or something. So I think that the privilege is a big one, because
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think we can talk about the spiritual or physical awakening which is happening, but any kind of global south or any kind of marginalized people won't have that. So that's kind of what do you think about it? I mean, how do you deal with these kind of different layers?
Oh, I
Mm.
have a great example of that. I was an ambassador for this group called Unite 2030, and ambassadors were from everywhere. So I was representing Northern Europe basically, as one of the reps, and but we had ambassadors from like Bhutan and the Commodore Islands and Namibia, right? And so when particular days during the year would come up, like Earth Day, right?
Mm.
The lead of the group, and from particularly richer countries, were saying, well, we should do something to celebrate Earth Day. And the ambassador from Namibia said, yeah, that's great. You guys go ahead and do that. No one in my region, first, knows what Earth Day is. They don't find anything particularly relevant to be celebrating regarding
Mm.
that. And
Mm.
they have, mandated like action items, like where are they getting clean water and things like that. Right. So the pushback was that's a luxury, right? We're all here in support of the same thing, but are definitely coming at it from different places.
Yeah, it's true because there's kind of an echo chamber thing, isn't there? It's like, we even though we try to read beyond the immediate echo chamber, the way society is set up now, the way media and communication and information is set up, it's kind of feeding us the stuff that it knows we understand, that it knows that we have some kind of connection with. I wondered if we could go like a little bit wider as well. I think that's really interesting actually, because if we were to look at astrologically what's going on, so apparently, we are influenced by the planets around us and the sun, and the vibration of the earth. And then if you look at science, everything is frequency and vibration. And then if you look at what frequency and vibration is, it's a set of information in a kind of binary code. And it's like, so if we're living in this system that is constantly influencing us, and we are either awakened to receiving everything or half asleep and not receiving everything, like that's a different level of what you were talking about, Tess, in terms of who the privilege. Sorry, I was looking for the word, the privilege. Like maybe there's a kind of a cosmic privilege. Like, I don't
Oh,
know, but the point of this is that we're supposed to have been moving from a 2,000 year cycle of a Piscean age, which is very much about dogma and religion and bureaucracy, and now we're evolving into this what's described as an Aquarian age, which is more fluid and more feminine and more accessible, and and maybe more spiritual. And I don't mean religious at all by saying that. I mean like a higher level of consciousness. I wonder if that is influencing the awakening, whether things are happening within our system that are awakening us in the mental, the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual, because we are obviously part of, I agree, I think, a much bigger system. But just throwing that out there. Sorry, that was a bit of a ramble, guys.
No, it's good. I really, mean, I'm not expert in any way as to logic thinking, but I've written a bit about spiral dynamics, that we have different layers, and people say they now in the teal age. So, and then the next layer is then the yellow age with universal connection. But the tricky part with all of this is that we different people are in different stages.
Yeah.
So not everyone's in teal, not everyone is in coral, whatever is coming. They're also in different layers before us, and that also look at what's happening in US. And in Germany, fascist government. So that means these things are mixing up, and that's a different layer. But then also, like you said, vibrations definitely. How are they going into us, or do we allow them? Or it's the same like radio waves. I mean, compared to something is coming at us, are we allowing that to enter us? What are we doing with that? So I think that there's a huge, all these different layers. Yeah, and do we want them to awaken? And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I definitely,
It's
this
interesting you
complex
talk
is getting
about
really
like
complex.
being influenced by stuff as well, like what you said about being influenced by stuff. I mean, I went into London this week. I very rarely go. And as soon as I get off the train, I see within an hour like more people than I've seen all month in where I live in North Yorkshire, and
Sure.
I am definitely vibrated by something. I don't know whether it's massive people, the noise, the Bluetooth, the Wi-Fi. Who knows what it is? But I definitely feel like it challenges my awakened state. So therefore,
Yeah.
I have to shut down like certain aspects of it, and then yeah, does that happen to you when you go into
Oh
kind
yeah.
of buzzy areas?
Well, there's an overstimulation to it, right? You almost feel like I've lived in a lot of big cities, New York before London and Los Angeles. You're overstimulated. So whether that's by information, billboards, right, sounds, or just people. So it's hard to, so much like kind of our media and social media apparatus, it's hard to know where to focus in any one place or one direction. And I think it is hard to find real awakening in that because you're bombarded. And so there's no kind of room for any catharsis
Mm,
to kind of set in and have a deeper dive internally on any one thing before you're already being thrown other stimuli, right? That distract and keep you from reaching that. That's why people will say, "Oh, I need to get out of town. I need to get off the grid." Right? People say
mm,
things like this, especially when they want to go on
mm,
a vacay. They say, "I need to get out of town," and you usually hear people say that who live in bigger areas, like bigger cities. "Oh, I need to get away from the noise." You know, that's the way they can find a more easy awakening. I think.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I've been in London 2 weeks ago, and then came to Germany here just 2 days ago. What I feel is exactly that. I feel a lot. I mean, I'm generally a person who feels a lot, who's sensing a lot, but with more and more people, I sense that everyone is about feeling, and maybe that's what you described before, Jarvis. That kind of new century, what the new state. It's so much about feeling, feeling, feeling,
mm,
and sometimes we don't know what to do with all these feelings because they just swamp over us, and they're like a wave, and that's just difficult. And maybe that is if we ever come to talk about what kind of capabilities do we need with awakening, maybe I think dealing with feelings is a huge one. So
mm,
do we sense them? Do we let them wave over us? Do we come in? We can talk about also different kind of psychological terminologies like acceptance, commitment therapy, etc. So that's a big one. I mean, feeling. So what do you think? I mean, I think you're people who also feel a lot. So what do you do with
mm,
them with these things?
Yeah, yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think part of my personal training has been, being born as a man, often men are kind of told not to cry or not to
Oh,
feel.
sure.
I mean, luckily mine wasn't too extreme, but there is that kind of programming, particularly in our society. So most of my, if you like, personal development work has been about feeling, about learning to feel, learning to listen,
Yeah.
and that to me all feels part of the seeds of awakening. Um, but yeah. You know what I was thinking as well while you were talking about that. I was thinking about AI, and it's said that within maybe 3 to 5 years, AI is drastically going to take over a lot of the doing parts of how we humans operate. Like, so a lot of the jobs, a lot of this, a lot of the other. So I've been really contemplating, like, how do we set up systems in society that give people opportunities to, yes, maybe to feel, but to be more happy with themselves without doing, like without having to do all the time. Like,
Yeah.
I'm really interested in that, and maybe this is all part of the awakening process. So that's kind of my sense on it.
Well, and you and I had talked about this before. That also the kind of the sentiment of, do we really want other people to benefit as we want to benefit? And I think that's part of awakening, right? Is realizing that it's not binary. Like, we don't live in a binary, right? It's we live in a communal society, and we need community. It's we absolutely need other people. None of us would do well completely alone. So this idea that through AI, right, if the goal of AI is to be able to accomplish things without us needing to put in all of the labor, right, and time, that we've created things that can do the time and the labor for us. If we're able to achieve that, then and we're able to reach a place where we have more autonomy to, have free time, have more awakening and freedom, would we then want other people to also benefit in that, right? Because more of the work is being done, we've accomplished that.
Mm.
And I think that's an interesting one, because I think that really speaks to awakening: is, do we want the same thing for others as we really want for ourselves?
Yeah, I think then we come back again to the privilege we talked before. I mean, that part of AI. I mean, still there will be millions of people who still will have to work. They do things which even AI don't want to do
Yeah.
probably. So again, we talk about, okay, can I afford? Can I be in that awakening? And then the second question also, who is awakening? Maybe we are not awakening, and maybe AI is awakening. So are we?
Mm.
Is this turning around? So there's all these trends which are experiencing currently in this exploring for this topic. So it's always a big question. Like we are waking up to something, and you could also say someone else is also awakening in parallel to us.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, and that it's interesting, the whole kind of, if you like, the philosophical side of AI, because if I understand, if I the little bit of understanding I have about the way our universe works is that if we are supporting a narrative in terms of information, then that is the experience that we create, whether that's individual or collectively, right? So therefore, the information that we input into our cosmic system or earthly realm system is exactly what is being created as our experience, right? And that's fascinating, because that's exactly what AI is. Whatever you input into the system, it learns from its own experience and then
Mm-hmm.
becomes more intelligent. But what's definitive about that, potentially, if you believe in what I do, is that shows us that AI is possibly mimicking how things actually really are, but with technology for us to experience it on the outside of ourselves, which could then potentially empower us as a species to go, wow, if we just simply awaken and then focus on love, unity, abundance, harmony, etc., that's the reality that we would create in our physical quote unquote experience. I think that's super fascinating because there's loads of papers now out talking about the convergence between science and spirituality. And what I love about that is that gives each individual the opportunity for them to recognize that they are actually in control of their vehicle and its environment. How cool is that? That feels to me like an awakening. And then you can just have fun with it, right? You can just like just play.
No, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I love the fact that it. I mean, it really does learn from your personality what you feed into it, and I think that does start to kind of, I think, also possibly awaken us more into our own thinking, right? Seeing another perspective that's able to, it kind of instantly feed loop, back onto things that it's picked up on, and then taken from all kinds of sources, right? So it is a fascinating kind of learning tool that way about ourselves and kind of the information we choose to put out there, especially about ourselves. Um, but I also think that we are prone to over relying on things that will do things for us, whether that's other people or
The convenience
right.
model.
Yeah, and that can be a wrench in the wheel towards, really imploring people to continue to be curious, right? Which is what we definitely share, in this room, right? Is really encouraging people to do that, and because if we stop being curious and we start letting things like the technology just kind of do it all for us, I mean, you're already seeing that a bit in over reliance. Um, then it's a yeah, it's tricky.
That comes back to privilege again, doesn't it, Tess? It's
Sure.
like
Yeah, I mean, I also thought just to throw something more in it. I mean, recently I heard about the term of freedom cities. So you heard about this, like the developed by Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen, and like these billionaire investors who, I think one of them already built a physical city, which works of deregulated areas where everything is possible. You can basically build work, go back to coal mining, to different ways of basically everything is possible. And then on the other hand, people talk a lot about that terminology about the spaces of these kind of insular spaces, like where we are together, a space of insanity. And I think so that these different methodologies of spaces, which kind of want to teach us, want to say us everything is possible, and spaces where people live together in kind of harmony or with the same kind of typology of people. So, for instance, we sometimes it basically comes down to space typology. We had null space and safe spaces, play spaces, uncomfortable spaces, third
Mm.
spaces. Now we have the freedom cities, we have the islands of sanity, and that begs the question for me that we are waking up and we immediately want to move into kind of a next framing because we don't want to be waved over by everything for this weekend, but we still let's move into kind of new kind of silos or bubbles where you can compartmentalize where how we're living forward. So that's kind of feels kind of logic to human because they just want to be safe, they want to be in something, but it also shows that we need to take care. Okay, maybe after awakening and moving into compartmentalizations, that needs to be something else, maybe an in-between zone.
But a lot of people's concepts of what, like how they interpret what will keep them safe, is oftentimes very out of whack, right? That's like if you've seen, when people do those interviews on the street and they say, if you were in a forest, lost, and the only person or the only other thing in your vicinity is either another human like a man or a bear, what would you pick? And and a lot of people pick the bear, thinking that that would be safer than another human. right? That inevitably they don't trust other humans, right? If it was just one and you and one other person, right, they would rather trust the bear. So I think a lot of people don't really think rationally when they think about being safe. This is why people don't speak up for other people, right? You see someone in trouble, you see someone in a situation, and the majority of people, it doesn't mean you don't care, but in terms of acting on it, right, the majority of people don't really act on it. It doesn't mean they don't care, but yeah, because they think that that is the safest option.
There's a lot of fear, isn't there? There's a lot of fear involved in that equation. It makes
Yeah.
me wonder as well, like, the narrative constantly, it's very negative, the news and, the information that comes out. And there is this supposedly paradigm that's keeping us kind of locked in fear, whether you subscribe to that or not, who knows? But it makes me wonder whether we are, as part of a bigger system, whether we are driving ourselves to the most narrowest way of being so that we can actually then pop into an awakened state. So there's that theory. And then the other thing is maybe we're not meant to, maybe there are beings on this planet that understand what true awakening is, and they kind of are in control, a conspiracy fact, maybe, rather than theory, that they don't want us to be awakened because then we are not, kind of slaves to the system, which is kind of what we are right now, right? We're slaves to a system to make money, to pay our rent, to buy our food, to do this, to do that. And it just seems like, I don't know, it just seems, it doesn't feel like this is what I signed up for when I wanted to incarnate.
Oh, I mean that. Yeah, I mean that reminds me of I forgot if I brought this up to you guys, but like there was an economist on TV, right? Was asked, "What do you think about if you switched a driving economy to a cycling economy?" Right? And so, long story short, his answer was, personally, he'd be all for it. He thinks that would be a healthier, kind of landscape, and that could definitely be achievable. But as an economist, he said it'd be a disaster because ultimately the societies we design are designed for to thrive when people are unhealthy, when they are more
Mm,
stagnant, when they are more reliable on systems that take
mm,
care of them, like needing high level medical care and large insurance costs, and and a borrowing economy where people need to borrow money, and thus you are in debt, and thus you are not free, right? So it was interesting to hear that perspective, right? That
mm.
we all kind of buy into it because, well, not all of us, but but we're pressured to buy into it because then it starts that cycle of people saying, well, this is just the way it is.
Mm.
So
Which
it's
is
the way it's done.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
we're born into it, aren't we?
Yeah.
Do you think there are any examples of people that you would say are good ambassadors for awakened ones? I mean, there's like Dalai Lama, obvious people like that. But is there anybody out there in society that you think, gosh, they're awakened? Like,
I mean, definitely when you talk about frequencies of vibrations, I have good friends, German, Dutch ones, who can sense what is going on, and they are. I feel they are kind of ambassadors of an awakened being, and they can show. They really turn up more as a seer in a kind of, and they see what things going on and then point people into that direction. So I think that's definitely possible, and that these people exist. And that's the back to the question: do we need to have maybe a typology of people who are aware of awakening, have been going through that, and aware of the different crises, and can guide people through this first step? I mean, we just at the first step of, we're not even talking about swimming in the oceans of discomfort. We just at the moment of noticing an awakening. So that means who is good at these things? Who has a list of capabilities which you need? Okay, you first see it, and then you wake up. You can also just say, okay, I recognize it. I recognize some things is really not going good. And that comes, I mean, these people are there. We need much more of them. And we need guides to guide us through this process of awakening.
yeah, I agree. That's very much what our kind of movement's about. But I agree. because there doesn't seem to be any really good leadership examples. The ones that get the press, that get the coverage. There doesn't seem. I mean, maybe there are. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right places. But I think you're right, Tess. That we need those influential personalities or characters or strong visionaries to. But maybe if you're awakened, you don't want to be in that position.
Yeah, but that's the difficult thing. I mean, I totally agree. I mean, like I don't want to talk about. I don't want to talk to people who just awaken. I mean, I want to work with these people who want to build something new. For example, that's the whole difficult of endings. It's difficult. It's messy. I think there are also different people can do different things. Like people are really good at holding hands and comforting people and can guide you slowly through the shit into the new beginnings,
Mm.
and then others are more further on. And so, but we need those people, and ideally, everyone, over the next 10, 20 years, should develop capabilities to awaken, to help others, and to move into the next state. Otherwise,
Mm.
and those who are not, probably they will, hard to say it, fall, falter, and freeze.
Mm.
I mean, you would hope so, right? But it kind of makes me think too why that's it's not impossible. But I think it's very like when you say people people who are especially more empathetic and kind of more awakened aren't necessarily in the spotlight. People that get into positions of power largely do so in a belief that you need to be highly objective, right?
Yeah,
Like
that's true.
employers who say if you need to lay someone off or something, you need to just right. You need to be able to do it with no emotion and not to respond to emotion, right, or whatever. It just has to be done. Or a doctor delivering bad news. You gotta just right, just pull the band-aid off and do it with no emotion, right? So I think you have this kind of and there's an I mean there is an important necessity to that. But I think people can also quickly become just desensitized entirely where they start
Mm.
functioning like that all the time. When it's like, no, you don't need to be this kind of cold wall, that's all objectivity all the time. That's not how we're going to change things. So I think because of that, you don't necessarily see people who are more emotionally connected and more empathetic by nature getting
Mm.
the spotlight.
Do you think it comes to me as a question like, is it our individual role to recognize to become awake and recognize that we're part of the bigger picture, but actually to really focus on self awakening rather than trying to awaken others? Like, can we truly awaken others unless we're truly awakened ourselves? Like, I don't know. I mean, that's
Well,
interesting.
will people believe it? Right.
Or
That's
will
like saying
yeah,
if you're encouraging someone to do something, they're like, but you don't do it. Right. I mean,
yeah.
this is the pushback when we talk about climate things. Oh, how could someone get up on a pulpit and say you should support the planet, and then you see that same person like on a yacht or jet, or what, like private jet or something like that, right? You hear that as an example of high profile people doing that, and the onus isn't necessarily on the individual to be that beacon, right? Like they can still encourage people,
Mm.
but it gives people easy ammunition to not listen to you.
Mm. It does.
So that coming back to that whole awakening, I mean, are we freely awakening into something, or are people awakening us? Like you said, they just whipping off the band aid
Mm.
and they just pull us out of that, while we might not even be ready, which is happening. So,
Mm.
It's
Yeah, I think it's a great. You know what? For our first kind of live conversation, what an amazing subject to be talking about. I've really
yeah.
really enjoyed it. It's definitely going to leave me with some questions because actually, just having this conversation with others and getting a different perspective is thrilling. That's awakening in itself.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah.
there's so many directions this one can go, right? Because Yeah. Well, and there's people that think they're awakened, and then that's also selective. It's like, are you? Let's see.
Yeah, yeah. And you might gaze upon them and think,
Yeah.
no, you're definitely not.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I think we need to call
Yeah.
it a day.
Yeah.
A great subject, Tess. Thank you for bringing that to the party. I really enjoyed it, and really good to hang out with you guys. Let's do it again very, very soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Next time,
Thanks so much.
I'll sound better too. I
We
won't.
hope you feel better, Ben, next time.
Yeah.
Cool. See you soon, guys.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sue. Bye bye. Talk
Bye
soon.
bye.
Bye.
Tschüss.